What's good, YouTube? It's your boy, Blue Blood Sports TV, back at y'all with another one. So, we have some interesting news. As YouTube sensation turned professional boxer Jake Paul and his company, he has a new company in which he signed fighters to his company, okay? Jake Paul has had now 5 fights in his career, and he has 4 knockouts in doing so. Obviously, Jake Paul is a YouTube sensation. That's what he's known for doing, but Jake Paul has now began his road to advocating, for combat athletes, okay, in the sport of boxing and in the UFC now, okay. So Jake Paul, he had a brutal knockout over UFC legendary fighter Tyron Woodley. They fought twice. Jake Paul in the second fight, most recently, Jake Paul knocked out Tyron Woodley in brutal fashion. But Jake Paul, he's been advocating for women's boxing as well. He's 5-0 with 4 knockouts. Jake Paul is 25 years old, 6'1" with a 76-inch arm reach. He last was seen in the ring December 18th when he brutally knocked out Tyron Woodley. Okay, so with that said, Jake Paul, he started his boxing company, his promotional company, and Jake Paul, he signed Amanda Serrano, who's a 7-division world champion, unified champion. She's already a living legend in the sport of boxing. So he signed Amanda Serrano, okay? And so Jake Paul, on a few of his undercards, he's had athletes. He has real combat athletes on the undercard of his fights. And Jake Paul, he's paid these athletes more than they've ever been paid in their careers. And so when it comes to the UFC, Jake Paul is obviously going after Dana White, who's the founder and CEO and the president of the UFC. So Jake Paul, he's advocating, especially for women's boxing. He feel like women's boxing should get more recognition. He feel like women boxing, they should get paid a lot more than what they get paid. And so, he's a huge advocate for women's boxing, okay? Again, he signed Amanda Serrano. Amanda Serrano had been seeking out, a big fight, with 3-division world champion, Olympic gold medalist, undisputed world champion, Katie Taylor. Okay, Katie Taylor's from the UK, British superstar boxer. And, Amanda Serrano versus Katie Taylor is a fight that everybody has been waiting for, but it just couldn't come to fruition. And there was a lot of politics standing in the way of this fight happening, okay? In comes Jake Paul, okay, between Amanda Serrano, who's a 7-division world champion, a legend in the sport of boxing, and they can't get it done, okay? Katie Taylor's with Matchroom CEO and promoter Eddie Hearn and DAZN, and they just simply can't get a deal done, okay? So with that said, Jake Paul comes in, and immediately he gets Amanda Serrano the biggest payday of her career, the biggest payday in Amanda Serrano's career, and he makes the deal, gets a deal done, and gets a fight done. Now we're going to see Amanda Serrano versus Katie Taylor. Ironically, he comes right in and gets the deal done, okay? And all these years, we've been waiting for this fight for the better part of 2 years at the very least, and we just couldn't get it done, okay? Now he comes in and he gets it done. Well, April 30th, in Madison Square Garden, New York, you're going to get Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano, massive undisputed showdown, okay? And so, there's another big fight that's going to be staged on that day, and that's a unification bout between undefeated 2-division world champion, Mexican superstar boxer Oscar Valdez, who is the reigning WBC super featherweight 130-pound world champion, undefeated. And also, you'll have him facing off against Olympic silver medalist, 2-division world champion, the reigning WBO super featherweight world champion, superstar boxer Shakur Stevenson. That's going to take place April 30th, Las Vegas, Nevada, at the MGM Grand Garden Arena. So, it's competition, okay? There's going to be a competition there. And, Bob Arum was asked, legendary promoter, top-ranked CEO and promoter. Bob Arum promotes, he promotes Shakur Stevenson, he promotes Oscar Valdez, but he also has a female fighter who's a world champion, unified world champion, and Michaela Meyer, okay, on Top Rank, okay? And so with that said, Bob Arum, he was asked about the competition, And Bob Arum, he stated there is no competition. Okay, there's not a lot of attention and a lot of value in women boxing. Okay, so that didn't sit right. Obviously, it didn't sit right with Jake Paul. Okay, now Jake Paul, again, he's been advocating for fighters in the UFC to get more money than they're currently getting. Okay, they had a major card with Francis Ngannou this past weekend, a heavyweight in the UFC, and who was probably arguably the most exciting fight in the UFC, and Francis Ngannou, a pay-per-view card and a total card with about 15 fights on the total card, including Francis Ngannou. It combined for 1.8 million across the board. Francis Ngannou got 600,000 for his fight across the board. So Jake Paul, he's been advocating for those guys to stand up, and stand for themselves, and make a name for themselves. Okay. So with that said, Bob Arum comments didn't go over well. So Jake Paul, he called Bob Arum a dinosaur, and he backed. He said that Bob Arum knows nothing about the sport of boxing, which we know is completely untrue. He knows a lot about the sport, but he said he's a dinosaur in the sport of boxing, and he's not affecting change. And because of people like Bob Arum in the sport of boxing, it's hurting the sport. And he's saying that people like Dana White in the UFC, it's hurting the UFC. Okay, so with that said, Jake Paul then takes to social media and points out undefeated 3-division world champion, former undisputed junior welterweight, turned WBO welterweight world champion, who is widely considered by many to be the #1 best pound-for-pound fighter in the world, in Terence "Bud" Crawford. Terence Crawford has 38 wins, no losses, no draws, 29 big wins by way of knockout. He's 34 years of age, 5'8", with a 74-inch arm reach. Now, ironically, Terence Crawford, he had his last fight, which was his biggest fight in his career, against two-time welterweight world champion superstar boxer Showtime Sean Porter, November 20th in Las Vegas, Nevada, at the Mandalay Bay Arena, in which he got a 10th round stoppage victory over, Sean Porter, which no fighters have ever done in Sean Porter's career. He was the first to do so, and afterwards, everybody's wondering, why hasn't Terence Crawford had the biggest fights of his career? Well, after this fight, with Sean Porter, Terence Crawford, he let it be known that he is parting ways with legendary promoter Bob Arum, ESPN, and Top Rank. He's going about his business. And then soon after the fight, Terence Crawford, he decided that he's going to take Top Rank and Bob Arum to court, citing that, they just haven't fulfilled their obligations, and that they neglected his career because he's an African American fighter, and they just didn't put much stock into his career, and so he's taking him to court and he's suing him for $10 million. So Jake Paul sees the opportunity, and Jake Paul is now making sure he attempts to be able to secure possibly Terence Crawford. So he tags Terence Crawford. He goes in on Bob Arum. He tags Terence Crawford, and he says, Terence Crawford went through the same thing with Bob Arum, the same way Bob Arum views, women boxing is the same way Bob Arum, he views other fighters, so on and so forth. And so Terence Crawford, he agreed, and he said, my piece, I said my piece, and, he just put shaking my head, because obviously we know that history is showing that, Bob Arum, he had an MBF rule for his fighters at one point in time. And Bob Arum also, he speaks his mind, and so with that said, he's throwing his hat in the ring to try and sign Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford is a promotional network free agent. And so because Terence Crawford is a network promotional free agent, it leaves the door open for a possible signing of Terence Crawford to, Jake Paul's company. But Jake Paul just doesn't have the power. He doesn't have the finances to be able to, afford Terence Crawford. But, stranger things has happened, especially in the sport of boxing, okay? We've seen stranger things in the sport of boxing. So anything is possible in the sport of boxing. But there's reports and rumors that Terence Crawford is going to be with advisory team MTK Global for the foreseeable near future. And everybody wonders what's going to be the next move for Terence Crawford. So Terence Crawford, is a hot commodity, obviously. Many people, they want to, sign Terence Crawford because he's already established. But I believe he's just too big for Jake Paul. But he and Jake Paul agree that Bob Arum is not good for the sport of boxing, and that, Bob Arum is doing a disservice to the sport of boxing. So we got to see how this unfolds and plays out. Is Terence Crawford willing to sign with a guy like Jake Paul? That would be enormous. But does Jake Paul have the finances to be able to pay for a Terence Crawford? Now, one thing to pay for Amanda Serrano and everybody's purses, giving them a bigger purses. It's a whole nother thing trying to pay for a star in a situation, a position of Terence Crawford. So let's see how this unfolds and plays out. But that's all I got for y'all. Make sure you hit the like button, drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know what y'all think. Y'all already know what it is. It's your boy Blue, Blue Blood Sports TV. Hate, like, comment, and subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell icon to get all the new notifications. Follow me on Instagram at Blue Blood Sports TV, all one word. Y'all already know what it is. Shout out to the entire LDBC. Shout out to New Media. Shout out to Black Media Row. Make sure you like and share these videos. That's all I got for y'all. Peace.
This is Amanda, the real deal Serrano, and you're watching Blue Blood Sports TV.